Before the Crusades began, life in Europe was harsh and unforgiving. Most people never traveled beyond their village. The streets were muddy, food was scarce, and winters could kill as easily as a sword. Disease spread quickly, and a single bad harvest could mean starvation. Peasants worked endless days for lords who barely remembered their names. There were no comforts, no promises, only faith, fear, and the hope of a better life after death. But soon, one man's words would change everything. Soon, faith would turn into fire, and that fire would consume the world. It's 1095. You don't know it yet, but your world is about to be set on fire. Right now, you're probably a second son with no land, a peasant tied to a lord's field, or maybe a knight with a rusty sword and an appetite for something more than local squabbles. Your life is mud, toil, and the ever-present fear of famine or plague. But far away, in a sun-drenched town in France called Clermont, a man in fine robes is about to offer you an escape. He's about to offer you a purpose. Years from now, men will struggle to describe what he unleashed. A scholar will write of a horde as numberless as the sand on the seashore. A princess in a gilded palace will compare your numbers to the stars in the heavens. You will be called a swarm of locusts, a human river, a torrent of steel and faith. You won't just be a number, though. You'll carry something much heavier than your shield. You'll carry generations of rage and resentment, a simmering hatred forged in the violet heart of Europe. And this rage? It's going to manifest as fire and blood and slaughter almost everywhere you go. This river of people, your river, will flow from London and Paris, from Cologne and Milan. It will cross the plains of Hungary, wash against the great walls of Constantinople, and then break upon the shores of Anatolia. It's a river that will collect not water, but bones and blood and tears. And all it takes to start this flood is a single spark, a single speech from a man named Pope Urban II. He is about to give you a reason to leave everything behind. He is about to give you an enemy. In March of that year, Pope Urban is holding court in Piacenza, Italy, when a group of envoys arrives. They look different. They wear silk, and their words are heavy with the weight of a dying empire. They carry the seal of the Byzantine Emperor, Alexios I Komnenos. You've probably never heard of him, but his problems are about to become your problems. His message is a desperate one. He tells the Pope that Anatolia, a land that was once the heart of his empire, is now almost entirely lost. It's become a Turkish dominion. He warns that if something isn't done, Turkish armies will soon be marching deep into Europe itself. It's been barely a decade since a terrible battle at a place called Manzikert, and already the Turks have a fortress at Nicaea, so close to his capital you could practically see it from the walls. The man behind this conquest, a Seljuk leader named Suleiman Shah, even forced Emperor Alexios to sign a treaty acknowledging this new reality. But now, things have changed. Both Suleiman Shah and the great Sultan Malik Shah are dead. The Seljuk Empire is tearing itself apart in a brutal civil war between the Sultan's sons. Anatolia is exposed, vulnerable. This, the emperor tells the Pope, is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He's not asking for a holy war. He's asking for mercenaries. He wants professional soldiers to help him push the Turks back, to reclaim what was lost. He urges the Pope to act now, before the window closes. But as Pope Urban listens, you can imagine a different idea taking shape in his mind. A much, much bigger idea. The Europe you live in is a mess. It's teetering on the edge of collapse. For centuries, Viking longships have terrorized the coasts, leaving nothing but fear in their wake. The great empire of Charlemagne is a distant memory, shattered into 1,000 warring pieces. There is no law, not really. There is only the law of the strong. Brutal warlords and gangs of bandits roam the countryside, plundering villages like yours. Landless nobles gather armies of desperate men and attack their own families for a scrap of territory. You live in a world choked by a toxic fog of violence and fire. Even the Pope himself isn't safe. He's been driven from Rome by a rival, the Holy Roman Emperor. He's been wandering, trying to rally support. And now, listening to the pleas of a distant emperor, he's found it. He's found his great cause. By the time Urban reaches Clermont in late November, the plan is fully formed. Sure, helping Alexios would be useful. It would score him points against the emperor and give him influence in the east. But Urban sees a bigger prize. He feels the dark, violent energy pulsing through your world. He knows that with a little push, all that fury, all that desperation, could be aimed in a new direction. It could be channeled. If he can pull this off, it will give him power that no pope has ever dreamed of. On November 27th, he steps onto a platform to address a massive, eager crowd. You're not there, but you'll hear the stories. You'll hear them from preachers in every village square. His speech is a masterpiece of fury. He paints a terrifying picture of the Turks, describing them as a monstrous threat to all of Christendom. He tells you that your brothers and sisters in the East are crying out for help. Then he gives you the target. Not just Anatolia. He gives you Jerusalem. The truth, of course, is a little more complicated. Jerusalem has been under Muslim rule for over 400 years. For most of that time, Christian pilgrims like you could travel there safely. The rulers understood the value of the pilgrim trade. When the Seljuks took over, they didn't change a thing. In fact, they increased security. The Christians living in Jerusalem were treated perfectly well. But that's not the story you hear. The story Urban tells is one of desecration and oppression. It's a story crafted to ignite your rage, a portrait of hatred painted with holy words. When he finishes, a deep silence hangs in the air. You can almost feel the tension, the weight of his words. Then a single voice shouts it, Deus vult, God wills it. The cry spreads like wildfire, echoing through the crowd, a slogan that will soon thunder across all of Europe. It's the sound of your new destiny. Urban's call is for a military expedition, but it feels like a pilgrimage. The rules are strange, though. He says only the young and strong should go, and that you must be armed. No women, no children, no old men. But the reward he offers is beyond anything you could imagine. A full remission of all your sins. Go and fight, and your soul will be wiped clean. The land and property you leave behind, the church itself will protect it. A powerful lord, Count Raymond of Toulouse, is the first to step forward, seeing a chance to lead this great enterprise. But Urban has already chosen his own man, Bishop Adhemar of Le Puy, to be the spiritual guide. The spark has been lit. All across France and Italy, lords and barons announce they are taking the cross. Preparations begin everywhere. The departure date is set, August 15th, 1096. The Pope himself will later admit he's worried by the sheer scale of the response. But it's too late. The flood has begun. And now, the most passionate preachers are carrying his message to people like you. Most of these preachers are forgotten, but one will become a legend. His name is Peter, a hermit. You'll come to know him as Peter the Hermit because of the simple hood he wears. He's a small, wiry man from near Amming, with a dark complexion and clothes that always seem to be covered in mud. He lives on fish and wine, and some say his face looks strangely like the old donkey he rides everywhere. But when he speaks, something incredible happens. In the villages of France, you and hundreds of others will gather to listen, completely captivated. He tells you that this isn't just for knights and nobles. This is for everyone, women, children, the elderly, even serfs like you. God wants you all. God will protect you. He will grant you victory. It doesn't matter that you've never held a sword, that you have no money, not even a crust of bread for the journey. You listen to Peter, and you believe. Gilbert of Nogent, a man who knew him, would write, "Whatever he said or did, it seemed like something half divine. Soon you and thousands of others are leaving everything you've ever known to follow him." By the time you reach Cologne on April 12, 1096, you look around and realize you're part of something enormous, something terrifying. Peter himself seems overwhelmed. You're not an army. You're a mob. A chaotic mix of peasants, women, serfs, and more than a few criminals and bandits looking for an opportunity. How is Peter supposed to feed and control you all? The pressure is immense. Just then, a group of French crusaders, led by a knight named Walter Sans-Avoir Walter the Penniless, a fitting name, decides they can't wait. They march east on their own. Their departure eases the burden slightly, and Peter decides to stay in Germany a little longer, to preach and gather even more followers. You stay with him, caught up in the fervor. Walter's group is the first to go. A few knights and a few hundred infantry. They cross Hungary with the king's permission and arrive at the Byzantine border at Belgrade. But the governor there isn't expecting them. He was told the real armies wouldn't arrive until August. He has no food, no supplies. So what do Walter's men do? They start to pillage. This, you'll learn, is a common theme. The Byzantines have no choice but to fight back, and many of Walter's followers are killed. Then an order comes from the emperor himself in Constantinople. Escort the rest of them to the capital. So in mid-July, Walter and his ragged survivors finally limp into the legendary city, not as conquerors, but as a problem to be managed. On April 20th, it's your turn. Under Peter's command, your massive, unwieldy host begins its march from Cologne. The King of Hungary lets you pass, but trouble finds you at the town of Semlin. The local governor tries to impose some order, and your crowd explodes. You witness the slaughter of 4,000 Hungarians. It's swift, brutal, and shocking. Then, just as quickly, the rage turns to panic. You know the king's revenge will be terrible. You flee across the river into Byzantine territory. It's here you realize Peter has lost all control. On June 26th, you enter Belgrade. It's empty. The locals have fled. So you and the others loot it. Emboldened, you continue your rampage all the way to the city of Niš, burning villages, stealing crops, and killing anyone who gets in your way. When you try to attack Niš itself, the Byzantine governor has had enough. He unleashes his army. The attack is sudden and devastating. A huge number of your companions are cut down. The next day, when you gather to continue the march, there are only about 7,000 of you left. You are humbled, beaten. The rest of the journey is quiet. Under heavy Byzantine escort, you finally arrive at the Great Walls of Constantinople on August 1st, 1096. While you were marching and fighting your way across the Balkans, the crusading zeal back in Germany has taken a much darker path. The men who stayed behind have found a new target. In the spring of 1096, the Rhine River Valley becomes a killing field. The targets are the Jewish communities. For centuries, they have lived here, prosperous and integrated. But their wealth has bred resentment. Now, your fellow crusaders see a chance for what they call vengeance. Led by men named Volkmar and Gottschalk, they unleash a wave of horrific pogroms. They sweep through the great cities of Speyer, Worms, and Mainz, slaughtering thousands. The church tries to stop them, but it's like trying to stop a flood. The streets run red with blood. When they've had their fill of murder, they too turn towards Hungary. But there, they make the mistake of inflicting the same atrocities on the local Christians. King Coloman's patience is gone. He sends his army, and they hunt down and annihilate these crusader mobs to the last man. Their crusade ends in a bloody heap on the Hungarian plains. The final, most terrifying wave of this people's crusade is led by a Count Emicho of Leiningen. His army is the largest yet, and it's filled with the worst dregs of society: thieves, murderers, and fanatics. Their target, once again, is the Jews. The famous cities of Europe, Cologne, Trier, Metz, are washed in blood. When their rage is finally spent, they march on Hungary. But King Coloman has learned his lesson. He denies them passage. Emicho, arrogant and foolish, ignores him and lays siege to a Hungarian fortress. This time, the king's response is apocalyptic. Emicho himself barely escapes with his life. The vast majority of his followers are slaughtered, their bodies left to rot before the fortress walls. Back in Europe, news of these disasters starts to spread. For the first time, people begin to whisper, maybe, just maybe, this isn't God's will after all. Meanwhile, you are standing outside the magnificent walls of Constantinople, and you can feel the emperor's anxiety. Alexios asked for professional soldiers. Instead, he got you, a disorderly, undisciplined mob. He looks at your ranks, filled with women and children, armed with farm tools and religious fervor, and he knows you are no match for the Seljuks. He meets with Peter the Hermit and gives him some sensible advice. Wait. The real armies, the armies of the barons and princes, are on their way. They'll be here in a few months. Peter, who by now understands the weakness of his followers, agrees. You are moved to a camp on the shores of the Golden Horn, under the watchful eye of Byzantine soldiers. The emperor treats you well, even allowing you to visit the city in small groups. But you and your companions have not come here to be peaceful tourists. You came to fight infidels, and your hatred for these Greek Orthodox Christians, with their strange rituals and immense wealth, is almost as strong. Soon you are pillaging the suburbs. Some of your more zealous companions start burning down the houses of the locals for no reason at all. Tensions explode. The emperor, seeing the chaos, changes his mind. On August 6th, he orders his soldiers to load all of you onto ships. You are ferried across the Bosphorus Strait, out of Europe and into Asia. Your new camp is at a place called Civitate. The emperor, still trying to be helpful, advises you to stay put, wait for the main armies, and for God's sake, do not provoke the Turks. This advice is utterly ignored. Peter's authority has completely disintegrated. You split into factions: French, German, Italian. You start raiding the local Turkish villages, slaughtering the defenseless inhabitants. These easy victories made you arrogant and reckless. In September, about 1,000 French crusaders march all the way to the walls of Nicaea, the Seljuk capital, and plunder the surrounding area. The garrison sends out a force to stop them, but you manage to defeat it. You return to camp with loot and captured Turkish weapons, which you sell to the Germans and Italians. This breeds jealousy. The animosity is now out in the open. Driven by envy, a force of 6,000 Germans and Italians marches south and captures a small fortress called Zerigordon. It seems like a great victory. The fortress is easily defensible and stocked with food. You decide to make it your base for future raids. But you've overlooked one tiny, critical detail. News of your little victory travels fast. It reaches the Seljuk Sultan, Kilij Arslan. He is not impressed. He sends one of his commanders to deal with you. On September 29th, Turkish troops appear before Zerigordon. The fortress is strong, but your fatal oversight is about to become clear. There is no well inside the walls. The only water source is a spring in a valley several kilometers away, and that spring is now controlled by the Seljuk army. Your priests try to keep your spirits up, but you can't drink prayers. After 8 days of agonizing thirst, on October 6th, you surrender. Those who agreed to convert to Islam are spared. The rest of you are either killed or sold into slavery. The Turks, however, are clever. They keep their victory a secret. Instead, they start a rumor. The rumor spreads like a plague through your main camp at Civitate. It whispers that the Germans at Zeragordon have not only held the fortress, but have also captured Nicaea and all its treasure. And, the rumor adds, they are refusing to share. The French in the camp are furious. Driven by greed, they immediately march toward Nicaea to claim their share of the non-existent loot. It isn't long before they discover the horrifying truth. Panic grips you all. The Germans and Italians are dead. You know you're next. Peter the Hermit is away in Constantinople, begging for help. You are leaderless and terrified. But then, in your desperation, you remember. You remember why you came. Wasn't it to fight the Turks? Wasn't this the whole point? Even if you die, you've been promised paradise. There's no more need for caution. You can finally fulfill your purpose. You can fight. The shortest way to Nicaea is through a wooded valley. You form up, knights in the front, infantry behind, and begin your march. You haven't gone more than a few miles when you walk straight into a perfectly laid ambush. Before you can even react, the trees erupt with arrows. The Turkish archers are disciplined. They aim for the horses first. The animals scream and fall, throwing their riders and crashing into the ranks behind them, creating total chaos. Then, the Turkish cavalry charges out of the woods. A few of your knights try to make a stand, fighting with desperate courage, but it's hopeless. A wave of pure terror breaks over your army. You turn and run, fleeing back towards the camp. But there's no escape. You reach Civitate just as the sun is rising, with the Turks right behind you. The camp, your last refuge, is overrun in minutes. It's a complete slaughter. A few of you manage to escape into the forest, but of Peter the Hermit's great army, almost nothing is left. The People's Crusade is over. It has ended in blood and failure at the very gates of Anatolia. The Turkish victory is absolute. Kilij Arslan thinks he has dealt with the threat from the west. He has no idea that you are just the appetizer. The main course, the Baron's Crusade, is about to begin. In the late summer of 1096, a different kind of army leaves France. This is not a mob of peasants. This is a column of elite knights, a few hundred strong. Their armor shines in the sun. Their war horses are clad in steel. They move with an air of arrogant pride. These are the knights of the King of France, and they are led by the king's own brother, Hugh of Vermandois. He's so full of himself that he sends messengers ahead to Constantinople, demanding a royal reception. Fate, however, has other plans. His ship is caught in a storm and wrecks on the coast. He is found by a Byzantine patrol and escorted to the capital not as a prince, but as a shipwrecked refugee. Instead of a grand ceremony, he's given a quiet welcome and placed under polite house arrest. Every move he makes is watched. Every word he says is reported to the emperor. Emperor Alexios is a brilliant, cunning man. He knows these Western barons, with their grand titles and empty pockets, cannot be trusted. He knows they will try to carve out their own kingdoms from any land you conquer. So he decides that before any of them can cross into Anatolia, they must swear an oath of loyalty to him. Hugh, now his guest, is the first to swear. A few days later, on December 23rd, a much larger army arrives. It's led by Godfrey of Bouillon, a zealous duke whose ambitions are vast. With him are his brothers Baldwin and Eustace. This massive force is marched across Europe without incident and now camps outside the city. The emperor's daughter, Anna, will later write that they seemed more numerous than the stars. Alexios is deeply worried. He needs to get these armies across the Bosphorus and away from his capital as quickly as possible. He sends Hugh to demand that Godfrey also swear the oath. Godfrey flatly refuses. He has no intention of being the emperor's pawn. In response, Alexios does something simple but effective. He cuts off their food supply. He thinks this will bring Godfrey to heel. He is wrong. The next day, Godfrey's brother Baldwin leads a raid on the city's suburbs. You see the smoke rising just outside the walls, and you can feel the fear spreading through the city. Alexios is forced to resume the food aid to stop the attacks. The tension is so thick you could cut it with a knife. In January, Alexios tries again. Godfrey refuses again. The food is cut off again, and the fighting resumes, this time more fiercely. The body count in the suburbs rises. Then Godfrey makes a fatal miscalculation. He tries a direct assault on the walls of Constantinople. The disciplined Byzantine army easily repels the attack. Godfrey has played his last card and lost. He, his brothers, and his entire retinue finally swear the oath of fealty. A few days later, they are ferried across the Bosphorus. Alexius's timing is perfect. Just as Godfrey's army is out of his hair, a new, even more dangerous figure arrives. Bohemond of Taranto, a Norman prince from southern Italy. He is a giant of a man, charismatic and terrifying in equal measure. Anna Comnene, the emperor's daughter, would write that his laughter alone could strike terror into the hearts of those around him. He and Alexios are old enemies. Years ago, Bohemond's armies had defeated the Byzantines and ravaged their lands. Now, these two bitter rivals are face to face in the imperial palace. The hatred between them is a physical presence in the room, but they are both pragmatists. Bohemond, surprisingly, swears the oath without any argument. Alexios rewards him with a room full of treasure. On April 26th, Bohemond and his Normans are also shipped across to Asia. But his nephew, the fiery young knight Tancred, is disgusted by his uncle's diplomacy. He refuses to swear the oath. Under the cover of night, he slips away and escapes across the strait to join the main Crusader camp. The Crusader princes are gathering, a volatile collection of ambition, piety, and greed, poised to unleash themselves upon Anatolia. The last great army to arrive is the largest of them all. It marched from southern France, led by the oldest and wealthiest of the princes, Count Raymond of Toulouse. With him is Bishop Adhemar, the Pope's chosen spiritual leader. Raymond has left his lands to his son, swearing to spend the rest of his life fighting in the Holy Land. When his army lands in Byzantine territory, the old habits die hard. They start to pillage. This leads to skirmishes with their Byzantine escorts. During one of these fights, Bishop Adhemar himself is wounded and briefly captured. When he's identified and returned, he calms the situation down, but the damage is done. Raymond arrives in Constantinople, expecting a grand welcome. He doesn't get one, though the emperor soothes his pride with expensive gifts. Raymond, seeing himself as the natural leader of the whole crusade, feels it's beneath him to swear an oath of vassalage. It takes all the diplomatic skill of the other leaders and the emperor himself to find a compromise. In the end, Raymond swears a modified oath. He doesn't recognize the emperor as his lord, but he promises never to harm him. For Alexios, it's enough. He now has a legal pretext to control them, a piece of paper to wave if they get out of line. The final group, made up of Normans from the north, arrives in May 1097. Their leaders, like Robert Curthos, the Duke of Normandy, were so reluctant to come that a large part of their army deserted before even leaving Italy. They too swear the oath, receive their gifts, and are quickly ferried across to Asia. Alexios can finally breathe a sigh of relief. The Crusaders are no longer his problem. They are Kilij Arslan's problem. And you, now part of this great host, are about to meet him. In early May 1097, Sultan Kilij Arslan is besieging the city of Malatya when he receives an urgent message from his capital, Nicaea. The letter is filled with panic. A colossal army of Franks is marching on the city. These are not the peasant rabble he destroyed last year. These are men of iron. Their armor is strong, Their horses are expensive, and they move in disciplined formations. The garrison cannot hold. If the Sultan wants to save his capital, he must come at once. Kilij Arslan immediately lifts the siege and races back west. He doesn't know it, but he's already too late. On May 6th, your army arrives before the walls of Nicaea. The siege begins. The Turkish garrison fights back bravely, their morale high. But 10 days later, Raymond's massive army arrives and completes the encirclement. The defenders' situation becomes desperate. They scan the horizon, praying for the Sultan's banner to appear. A small vanguard of the Sultan's army does try to break through, but you easily repel them. The garrison's morale collapses. They try to negotiate a surrender with the emperor's representative, but just then, news arrives that the Sultan's main army is near. The negotiations stop. At the end of May, Kilij Arslan finally arrives. He sees your vast, well-equipped army and knows it will be a bloody fight. He decides to attack Raymond's position on the southern side. The war horns blow and the Turkish cavalry charges. The battle is ferocious. This is the first time you face the Turks in a real battle. You see how they fight. Their knights are heavily armored, fighting in tight formations with long lances. The Turks are on light, agile horses, swirling in and out of combat, firing their bows with deadly accuracy, even while retreating. As long as you stay in formation, you are an unbreakable wall. But if you get isolated, they will surround you and pick you apart. The battle rages all day. By evening, both sides have taken heavy losses. Kilij Arslan realizes he cannot break the siege. Unwilling to sacrifice his entire army, he makes a painful decision. He withdraws, abandoning his capital to its fate. With the Sultan gone, you intensify your attacks, but the city holds. There's one problem you can't solve. The city is being resupplied by boat across a large lake on its eastern side. You have no ships. You finally have to swallow your pride and ask Emperor Alexios for help. He, of course, knew this all along. A small Byzantine fleet is dragged over land and launched onto the lake, cutting the city's last lifeline. The Turkish garrison knows it's over. They surrender not to you, but to the emperor. On the morning of June 19th, as you prepare for a final bloody assault, you are shocked and enraged to see the emperor's banners flying from the city towers. The Byzantines entered the city peacefully during the night. Your prize, the Sultan's treasure you've been dreaming of, has been snatched from your grasp. Alexios, however, is smart. He sends you a mountain of gold and silver as your share of the loot, and soon you convince yourself that this was for the best. After all, you didn't have to lose any more men taking a city you would have had to give to him anyway. You rest for a week, then prepare to march on. Your next target, the great city of Antioch. You have no idea what horrors await you on the road ahead. The march into Anatolia is a nightmare. Emperor Alexios, knowing the dangers, has sent a Byzantine commander named Tatikios to guide you. It's a good thing, too. Otherwise, you'd be marching blind into a death trap. Your army is so enormous that it's decided to split it into 2 groups, marching a day apart to make it easier to find food and water. You are in the vanguard, with the Normans under Bohemund. The second group, with Raymond and Godfrey, follows behind. The land is harsh and mountainous. You feel watched. Every hill, every bend in the road feels like a potential ambush. On the night of June 30th, you make camp at a place called Dorylaeum. The scouting reports are clear. But Bohemund makes a terrible mistake. He doesn't inform the army behind you. He doesn't know that the hills all around you are swarming with Seljuk soldiers. And they are commanded by Kilij Arslan himself. He has regrouped, gathered allies, and now he is here for his revenge. At dawn, the attack comes. It's a whirlwind of chaos. A storm of arrows falls on your camp. Before you can even get your bearings, you are surrounded. Bohemond realizes his mistake. He sends a messenger galloping back to the main army, then forms a defensive line. He leads a cavalry charge, but it's like crashing against the ocean. The heavily armored Norman knights can't catch the swift Turkish horse archers, who pepper you with arrows as they retreat. You are forced back to the camp, where you form a desperate defensive circle. For the next 5 hours, you live in a hell of dust, smoke, and noise. The thunder of hooves, the whistle of arrows, the screams of the wounded. You can't see the enemy. They are a ghostly presence in the swirling dust, appearing for a moment to fire an arrow, and disappearing again. You are exhausted, terrified, and you are starting to believe you are going to die here. Your heavy armor is the only thing keeping you alive. It deflects many of the arrows, but not all. Men are falling all around you. Just when you think all hope is lost, you hear it. A new sound, the sound of war horns from the rear. Through the dust, you see them. Banners. The main army has arrived. Godfrey of Bouillon leads a thunderous charge into the flank of the Turkish army. Now it's Kilish Arslan's turn to be surprised. He thought he had you all trapped. The tide of the battle turns. For 2 hours, the fighting is brutal and evenly matched. Then, another miracle. A third Crusader force, led by Bishop Adhemar, has circled around the hills and now attacks the Turks from behind. The Seljuk army, caught in a 3-pronged attack, completely shatters. Kilij Arslan is seized by panic. He and a few of his bodyguards manage to cut their way out and escape, but most of his army is trapped and annihilated. It's a stunning, decisive victory. Among the loot, you find the ropes the Turks had brought to tie you up with. The Sultan is a fugitive, but before he vanishes into the vastness of Anatolia, he enacts a scorched earth policy. He poisons the wells and burns the fields in your path. Your victory at Dorylaeum has saved you, but your journey is about to become even harder. The march that follows is one of the worst experiences of your life. The Anatolian plateau in summer is an oven. The sun is relentless. There is no shade. The water is gone, and the land has been burned. You are marching through a desolate, hostile wasteland. Men and horses begin to die of thirst and starvation. You finally limp into the city of Konya in mid-August. It's abandoned, but its gardens provide a desperately needed respite. It's here that the crusade begins to fracture. Godfrey's brother Baldwin, a man consumed by ambition, sees his chance. Along with Bohemond's nephew Tancred, he breaks away from the main army and heads southeast, toward the Armenian lands of Cilicia. He has heard there are riches and cities to be won there. He has no intention of going to Jerusalem if he can carve out a kingdom for himself first. He fights his way through the Turkish garrisons, and then an invitation arrives. An old Armenian ruler named Theros, in the rich city of Edessa, asks for his help against the Turks. Baldwin is welcomed as a hero. Theros is so grateful that he officially adopts him as his son and heir. A few weeks later, Theros is conveniently murdered in a riot. Baldwin's involvement is never proven, but no one has any doubts. On March 10th, 1098, he becomes the ruler of the city. The first Crusader state, the county of Edessa, is born. While Baldwin is securing his own personal kingdom, you are still on the brutal march south. By the autumn of 1097, the rumors of your approach have turned you into mythical monsters. They say you are giants who eat human flesh, that you are unstoppable. Finally, on October 20th, the Turkish lookouts on the walls of the great city of Antioch see your banners on the horizon. The governor, Yazian, is ready for you. He knows the fate of the entire crusade will be decided here. The siege of Antioch is nothing like the siege of Nicaea. The city is immense, its walls nearly 4 times as long, studded with over 400 towers. It is a fortress built by nature and by man, with a river on one side and a mountain on the other. You can't even fully surround it. You manage to blockade only 3 of its 6 gates, meaning the city can still be resupplied. Yagi Sian is a capable commander. He has a strong garrison and has stockpiled enough food to last for months. He has sent messages to the emirs of Aleppo, Damascus, and Mosul, pleading for help. All you can do is settle in for a long, miserable winter. The cold sets in, food runs out. You are reduced to scavenging for roots and leaves. Starvation and disease begin to thin your ranks. Men start to desert. Even Peter the Hermit tries to flee, but he is caught and brought back in disgrace. The Turkish garrison conducts regular raids, harassing your camps and adding to your misery. You are trapped outside the walls, slowly dying. In February, your situation improves slightly. The weather warms up, and supply ships from Genoa arrive at a nearby port. You manage to defeat 2 small relief armies sent from Damascus and Aleppo, but the city still won't fall. Your morale is at rock bottom. Then Bohemond, ever the opportunist, finds a way. He makes secret contact with a man inside the city, an Armenian captain named Firouz, who holds a section of the walls. Firouz has a grudge against the governor and is willing to betray the city for a price. Bohemond now has the key to Antioch, but he doesn't share it. He calls a meeting of the leaders. He makes a bold proposal. Whoever is first to enter the city gets to keep it. The other leaders are suspicious, but they are also desperate. They know that a massive Seljuk relief army, led by the powerful emir of Mosul, Kerboga, is on its way. If you don't take the city now, you will be crushed between its walls and Kerboga's army. Reluctantly, they agree. On the night of June 2nd, you watch as a small group of Bohemond's men silently place a ladder against the tower held by Firouz. They climb the walls and open a gate from the inside. Your army pours into the sleeping city. What follows is a night of pure horror, a terrible massacre. You kill everyone you find, soldier, civilian, Muslim, even local Christians in the confusion. By morning, the streets are running with blood. Yagi Sian escapes, but is killed by an Armenian woodcutter in the hills. His son retreats with a small band of survivors to the city's citadel, a massive fortress that looms over the city from the mountain. You have taken Antioch. But your celebration lasts exactly 4 days. On June 7th, Kerboga's enormous army, numbering some 35,000 men, arrives and surrounds the city. You have just escaped one siege, only to be thrown into another. This time, you are the ones who are trapped. The capture of Antioch was not an ending. It was a mirror, showing mankind exactly what it becomes when faith and fury share the same body. The Crusaders called it a victory, but in truth, it was only the beginning of a deeper descent. The city stood in Christian hands, yet its stones whispered of betrayal, hunger, and madness. The banners of God fluttered over streets slick with human blood, and still they believed themselves chosen. In the years that followed, the armies would continue south, to Jerusalem, to glory, to stories that would echo through 1,000 years. But behind every hymn of triumph lay a silence too heavy to name. Fields burned, villages vanished. Cultures that might have lived side by side instead learned to see each other as enemies forever. What began as a holy mission became a chain of vengeance that would stretch across centuries. For Europe, the Crusade brought more than relics and riches. It brought a fever, a belief that killing could be sacred, that conquest could be divine. It hardened borders not just on maps, but in minds. And though the soldiers would one day return home, the fire they carried would not die. It would live on in the stories they told, in the pride they passed to their sons, in the myths that turned slaughter into salvation. And yet, beneath all the horror, there was something deeply human. the desire to believe in something greater than oneself, to escape the mud, the famine, the endless struggle of medieval life. For many, the crusade wasn't about Jerusalem at all. It was about meaning. It was about finding a purpose powerful enough to justify their suffering, even if that purpose demanded the lives of others. Antioch was a warning, not from heaven, but from history. It showed how easily men can be consumed by the very faith that promises to save them, how quickly righteousness becomes cruelty and salvation becomes conquest. The same hands that built cathedrals could also burn cities. The same lips that prayed for mercy could scream for blood. And as the survivors of Antioch marched onward, toward the holy city that would define their legend, the world itself began to change. Trade routes shifted. Empires trembled. Generations yet unborn would live under the shadow of that march. The crusade was not just a war. It was a turning point, a moment when the West discovered both its strength and its darkness. And perhaps in that contradiction lies the truth of humanity itself, that every great movement begins with faith, but ends with the cost of it. The First Crusade didn't end at Antioch, or even Jerusalem. Its echoes still move through history, in the wars we fight, the beliefs we defend, and the lines we refuse to cross. Until we do,